Synchronicity. This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity.
Welcome to Synchronicity. My guest this week is Juha Riverhill. I said that weird. Juha Riverhill, who is a teacher, kind of spiritual consultant who is based in Finland, of all places. What's weird about this is I actually got a few requests from people in Finland to be on the podcast over the past month and a half, of which Juha was the first. And a fair number of people reach out to be on the podcast. And, I have to determine whether it's just kind of like a blanket blast out that they're sending to a million podcasters, or it's genuinely heartfelt and they like the show and they think it would be a good conversation. And Juha really struck me as someone who was very insightful and thoughtful. And so I had him on, and it was a really, really great conversation. As you can tell by the length of this, we had a lot of fun talking. He has some very interesting stories. And, we touch on something in this that I think is very important, which is there are a lot of prominent spiritual teachers and gurus and guides and people with all the credentials and marketing and glossed over beautiful positioning and marketing, and they got their pitch. And that's great. For those people, especially if they're helping others. There's nothing wrong with that. But as we've spoken about on this podcast plenty of times, I think it can get a little murky and a little tricky when that is just the main focus of being a spiritual teacher. When capitalism, makes too many inroads into an authentic spiritual path, it can be limiting, if not detrimental. So what's cool about Juha is he says this himself. He's like in the underground. He's not a prominent, he's well-known teacher, but he's doing his thing in his country and in Europe. And it's just great to know that people are like him are out there doing this type of stuff. So yeah, it was just a really good conversation. Apologies for getting this one out a little late if you're listening in real time as this is released. It's the Thanksgiving holiday, families in town, family obligations. I'm recording this in the garage, so if there's a bit of an echo, it's me in my freezing cold garage. It's like 8 degrees here in New York today. But yeah, Thanksgiving is an interesting holiday because I think a lot of people are like, listen, it's a shit holiday. It basically is memorializing and commemorating a very dark period in American history. And that's true. It is. That said, it also is a holiday that has an emphasis on being thankful and expressing gratitude, which is just probably the only spiritual hack that I know absolutely works. If you can tune into the kind of the gratitude frequency, your life will start to go in the direction that is beneficial for you and those around you. I mean, it's hard to maintain. And Juha actually gives a really good practice later on in this episode about how to deal with people who you just can't forgive. You just kind of can't let go. I know I have my people. I'm sure you do too. And he gives a very simple practice later in the episode. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, Thanksgiving, don't get too down on it because of the horrible history of this country. Try to take the good parts of it and the focus on gratitude and make that a bigger part of your life, I think is a good thing to do. I don't know why I'm getting on my soapbox here. Sorry about that. This episode is brought to you by freezing cold temperatures and low tire pressure. If you have a car and your tires have not been filled up with air in a little bit, you might want to go do that before it gets super cold, because guess what? Woke up today, had an errand to run, time crunch, had to go get air in my tires. Wasn't fun. So big thanks to air pressure, tires, and coldness, because that trifecta is a potent combo that takes up time out of my day. That's it for the ads. Big thanks to everyone. Update on Patreon. I am tearing down the walls. I am making it pay. You don't have to pay. You don't have to. If you want to support, of course you can. I'm not saying I don't need the money and I don't want your money. It's just that I really am kind of leaning into the concept of let's just give this stuff away for free. If I thought I was going to be making a shitload of money by gating everything and that was a real career path for me and my family, I would probably do that. But I think at this point in my career, my artistic career, I'd rather just get this stuff out there. So we will be making sure that that is available to everyone. All of the music you hear on the show that I've created, which is a good 98% of it, you'll have access to in full WAV and MP3 form. So stay tuned for that. It's patreon.com/synchronicity. The goal is not for me to accumulate as much money and followers as possible. I just want to get this shit out to you if you enjoy it. I get probably the most common comment I get on YouTube or a lot of places this stuff is syndicated is, how do I get it? What is that noise? Oh, that's my episode playing. That was me recording live into this. Here, that was saying the intro is done. No, get to the episode. So I'm going to do that. Big thanks to Juha for coming on. Have some very fun guests, some returning guests that you know and love coming up in the next week, some new ones who I think you're really going to enjoy. Big props to Massachusetts for legalizing weed. Granted, it's not done in the best way possible. A lot of the rich people are just going to profit off it, not everyone else. But I think the more kind of East Coast legalization we have, the better it's going to be for everyone. I know there's a huge listenership of this podcast in California. You guys forget that in a lot of parts of the country, weed is still like super duper illegal. It seems like it shouldn't be. It's even more illegal if you're a minority. If you're an ethnic minority, you're pretty much like, you have a good chance if you're going around smoking weed, you're going to get busted. White people, it's kind of de facto legal in certain instances, but it's not. So really just wanted to say big thanks to Massachusetts for taking a lead on that. Hopefully Dum Dum Cuomo gets the idea in New York and realizes that we should have kind of fair and open legal cannabis in this state. And hopefully we do it in the right way. So that's it. Getting to the episode, getting this episode out a little bit late, but it's not so bad. Without further ado, here is Juha Riverhill. Hey, Juha.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing really well.
Excellent.
I'm excited to do this today.
Yeah, me too.
I'm ready to get started whenever you are. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yes.
Cool. Oh, I just noticed it's snowing. Just started snowing where I am. That's cool.
Excellent. We don't have any snow.
It's funny. So we connected last month or a few weeks ago, and spoke briefly about a few different things. But I first of all, thank you for coming on and doing this. I really appreciate your time.
Well, I'm really grateful that you got me there, and I'm really excited and happy to be
Awesome.
here. Yeah.
So I thought we could start with kind of your what I'll call an origin story, kind of how you got started on the
Yeah.
path of kind of spiritual, work and inner work and all the things that you're doing now.
Yeah.
Could you give kind of an overview of how that started for you? And it can be as long or as short as you want. There's no time constraints.
Okay. Well, I started. I started with as I was a child. I was really sensitive, and everything was really different for me. I think from the other people around me.
Hmm.
I had really sort of exciting childhood. My parents argued a lot, and I was really on the edge all the time. And
Hmm.
then, of course, I had some spiritual. I think there are spiritual events happened to me when I was a child. I went to sleep, I went to bed, and right when I fell asleep, I felt some energies. I felt some really um, scary stuff.
Mhm.
As you would describe it, there was some entities trying to enter to me or something like that. I
Hmm.
felt such things and incidents happening to me, and I couldn't explain them,
How
and
old
I
were
couldn't.
you about?
I don't know. They happened between when I was in a comprehensive school in lower grades. Like I was something like between 8 and 12.
Gotcha.
Yes. And that during that time, I was really scared, and everything started for me through scaring and
Through
being
fear.
afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So that's how it started. And when I felt these entities coming to me, it was really shocking, and I could not speak to no one. I
Yeah.
couldn't speak to my parents. I was too scared, and well, I wanted to block it away. I didn't want to go into it. And then when I started really understand more life, then those things vanished. I
Hmm.
didn't feel them anymore. And of course, the life school started, and I went to upper grades. I was between 13 and 15. Of course, you start to think about girls and stuff. You
Yeah.
don't think about entities anymore.
Yeah.
But during all that time, I've really felt all the energies. I felt, I think you called that, that's being empathic
Yeah.
person. I'm really like that. I felt everything.
Hmm.
And it was really, sometimes really hard for
Yeah.
me. That's my early ages. So when I came 15, I went to church's uh, camp where everybody usually goes when you are 15.
Hmm.
You go to church camp and you get your confirmation.
Yeah.
And in that in that camp, there was 1 week or 2 weeks. I don't remember anymore. But there, I had a connection with divine.
Hmm.
That was the first time, and I think that is something that allowed my seeking of truth,
Hmm.
and that is amazing what happened there. And I spoke with, you could say God, you could say anything, but I really felt the higher energy, and nowadays I can say it was love unconditional
Yeah.
that approached me there. And then after that, and before that, even I was talking with my uncle many times about spiritual things, and he had been in some spiritual events here in Finland. And speaking to my first teacher, that is some Finnish guy, he was living here nearby me.
Hmm.
And age of 12, I was there first time with my uncle. I, I, I begged him to take me with him, but he was really exciting person and open-minded, and he was really nice to me, and started to speak me slowly some spiritual things. My uncle spoke me, and this person, he was called Esko in Finnish. His first name was Esko, and he became really famous spiritual teacher in Finland.
Hmm.
He started to, and his teaching started to interest in me. He was really talking about energies and entities from nature, the nature spirits and all that. That
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
really exciting.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too because that stuff a lot of people forget or just don't think about it, but that is just kind of where we've evolved from culturally, those nature spirits and just kind of, things that were taken just as part of life in what we call native or pejoratively primitive cultures. Like that was just a part of their lives and really served an important function. But then, when certain groups of people came in, they said, oh, this is all kids stuff, this doesn't mean anything, we're not going to do this anymore, and they just lopped it all off. So yeah, I think that's important to acknowledge there. But yeah, not to cut you off. Continue.
Yeah, and those nature spirits are really interesting. That they have really light and tender energy, and they're really
Hmm.
something that people forgot after Atlantis. I
Hmm.
think, and I know that after Atlantis and during all already time of Atlantis, people started to get distant from nature,
Hmm.
and then they forgot all the elves and
Yeah,
and
fairies and
fairies
magical
and all.
things. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's something that is part of the life here on Earth. And we have forgotten that totally.
Yeah. 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 It's
That's
so
a
true.
shame. Yeah. And then he started to teach me this Esko Jalkanen, he was called. He started to teach me in his, of course, I went to his speeches. He gave speeches here in my hometown because he lived here.
Hmm.
So I had chance to go and see him, and every week he had this speech in a library there in a town center. I went there to listen to him.
Hmm.
Also, my two brothers joined me.
Oh, nice.
Yes. So it was nice time, and everything was still innocent. I was
Yeah.
just seeking for the truth. And during the years, I started to read his things more, and actually, that was the first things that I learned right away.
Right.
When I
Right.
read something from his books, I understood them really easily. But when I was thinking about school stuff,
Yeah.
I don't know how did I go through the school time. That was not interesting at all.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
really
Not a unique experience for people not to be interested in the stuff they teach in schools. It's
exactly.
a universal thing, it seems.
It seems so. Yes, and especially afterwards, I can say that of course, it's really obvious because they didn't teach the things I was here about to teach to others.
Yeah, yeah,
They taught only maths and biological things.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. And then slowly I started to get hang of everything in a life in all perspectives. I think I became at the same time that I grew up as a person, I grew up as a spiritual being.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is quite rare these days, even that usually people wake up when they are over 30 or over 40 years old.
Yes. Well, that might be changing a little bit, I've noticed with younger people these days. But yeah, it definitely seems like a lot of people start to do, you know, hardcore inner work later in life when life gets more confusing rather than earlier on when there's kind of like a natural curiosity and innocence. And yeah, it's probably a mixture of just people's tendencies and also a cultural reinforcement type of thing, just where, people are not encouraged to look at things out inside as opposed to outside. So yeah, totally.
Uh, exactly, exactly. And then, as everybody, I had my youth, my becoming adult. But then I really felt that I never grew up too early, and even when I was 30, I think I wasn't adult enough.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I
I hear
grew
you.
up really late.
Yeah, yeah, I'm still growing up and I'm 35, so I hear you.
All right, excellent. So you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But but anyway, I was about 21. It was 1998.
Hmm.
I was really frustrated to my life from childhood to when I was about 20. I was all the time bullied,
Mm.
and I was so different from everybody around me, and it was really hard to try to deal with my emotions and what I had inside.
Mm.
And in that age, I think it was 1998 or 1997, I was about to jump from the roof.
Oh, wow, 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 wow.
That was that was something that I felt my low point.
Yeah,
You could say that.
yeah.
and I felt that I was falling into the dwell. What is it called? Where you take water.
Yeah, well,
You
yeah.
well, yeah, and you go in there. I was sinking into it. I
Mm,
felt it like that. I was sinking into the black tube,
mm,
and I felt that now, if I don't do anything to myself, I'm fucked.
yeah,
So, and then I felt the bottom of it. I went down there, deep down,
yeah.
and then I said to myself, now I'm in the deepest point where I can be. Now I can come up. I can rise.
Yeah, there's only one direction to go at this point.
Yes, yes, it was really, and I was really angry to myself from all that, and I shouted. I was alone at home, and I was shouting, and I was really in a point that I would have needed help.
Mm,
But then I said to myself, I will finish this life. I don't want this anymore. And my guides, they told me that, well, if you give up now, Juha, are you a tough guy or are you a soft guy?
mm,
And that helped me. I said to myself, okay, if I give up now, I'm the soft guy.
mm.
And luckily, I'm here to tell you the story. But
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
yeah,
That's
and
really awesome to hear. I mean, it's unfortunate that sometimes we have to go to such deep lows and despair and depression and just kind of self-loathing, and just it can be externally projected to kind of recognize. But like you touched, that metaphor is really really apt, because when you hit the bottom and you kind of know this is the bottom, like that's it. I mean, you can lay at the bottom forever, or just, say this is where I'm getting off this ride, but the
yeah,
recognition that, like, you know what, I can actually take control of this situation. So when you mention guides, is this something that you internally kind of communicate with? Do they have distinct kind of personas for you, or is it just kind of like a knowing presence or voice in your head?
well, of course, I read a lot of spiritual books
Sure.
between I was 16 or 15, and between 15 and 25. I read a lot, and I tried to seek for my truth, and actually I started from
Yeah.
occultism like that, and spiritual books, and then I spiritism and stuff, and then I went on. I wanted to know more. I wanted to know something more specific.
Yeah.
Those books only show me that there's a spiritual world.
Yes. Yes.
That's the only thing I got from them. Of course, I read one Daniken's book, who was really intellectual. He was telling about that we are not the whole planet, and all the pyramids and stuff has been built by another entities, not humans, and
Sure.
that was something really only intellectual, and I got
Sure.
something out of it, but not much. And then, of course, I started to do this with Esko Jalkan and so many things that finally, when I got back from England, I think I was here. I went to England and Ireland and Sweden. I worked in 3 countries before I came back to
Hmm.
Finland. In 1998, I flew to London and trying to find my way to go abroad, and
Yeah.
then after I came back, I was I visited Esko in his home, and he said to me that, oh, this kind of a boy we need to have to our thing, and we want you to work with us. And then
Yeah.
I said, okay, I can. And so he called to his person who was in a practical way of what is it now called, society. He has a society here in Finland, and so this woman called me from this society that, okay, look, Esko told me that we need to take you to work with us. I said, okay, what can I do?
Yeah.
She says, start a group here in my hometown, Jyväskylä. So I started. Yes, 2.5 years I was in charge of that spiritual group that we were concentrating on healing people
Yeah.
in methods that Esko used. And of course, we started and everything went really well. We always want to concentrate on high energies.
Mm.
And all the members of the group, they were really excited to help everybody. And they brought names that persons that had cancers and
Mm.
many diseases. And they brought these names to us and we healed. And
Wow.
then next week or 2 weeks afterwards, we got information that this and this person have been healed.
Wow. How many
So
people was that? Like how often and how many people?
I think we were meeting twice a month or something,
Wow.
and then we had around 12 people in our group,
Wow.
more or less every week. So, and we were really excited, and for a while it worked for me, but I wanted more. I seeked for more
Yeah.
because we were mostly concentrating on cleaning spiritual energies,
Sure.
astral energies, and helping people. I wanted more. I
Mm.
wanted to be enlightened, and
Mm.
I wanted to be in some other energies. I didn't want to deal with that low energy.
Sure, sure.
And at that time I was really scared all the time because
Mm.
this fear was my lesson. So
Like it is for so many people.
yeah. So I met many dark and really negative entities
Mm.
during that time, and then there's three entities that are two of them are famous from Bible. One is Satan,
Mhm.
and one is Lucifer,
Mhm.
and third is Ahriman.
Mhm.
And I was really scared about those three.
And what was it like when you were encountering these? Like give me kind of like a breakdown if you were to encounter any of those entities.
Well, do you mean that how do I felt them or
Yeah, like how do you like you're coming across an energy that you are identifying as one of those three. What does this process look, feel, and kind of what's it like going, what is it like for you?
well, like I said from early ages, I've been empathic and I've been
Yeah.
feeling all energies. And during all this time, maybe 15 years, I had chance to examine the energies, and I knew from the energy
Mm.
what entity or energy was that. So I
Mm.
could have. I was. Uh, there was like a There's like a library of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like I could. Feeling when you get that an entity or something is negative. I always feel it. I sometimes feel it on
Your
my
head.
forehead
Yeah.
chakra, and
Yeah.
of course solar plexus chakra as well,
So
here
it's
in
like
my belly.
yeah, so it's kind of like a felt thing. I know what you're talking about, and I think it's sometimes hard for people to understand who haven't had the experiences. But the way I'd kind of liken it is like a smell, but like a feeling that's a smell. So like if you have a smell like that you can identify, but you don't have the name for it, but oh, and then later it's basil. Of course, I know the smell of basil. It smells like basil. But if you didn't have the name for basil, whenever you smell that, you go, oh, there's that thing. So, what we're talking about is a very distinct impression of something that reliably you have enough experience with that you can then say, oh, well, this is what that is. And
Yeah,
there are also, on top of that, cultural names that we've given certain types of energies over, millennia that we say, okay, well, this is that. So I bring this up because I think some people, when they hear there's not a lot on this podcast, maybe thinking, oh, he's beating Satan, and are thinking you're saying, oh, well, some big devil came into your room. You're seeing it with a big red tail, and it's saying, hey, do this, do that. Whereas it's actually really just like, oh, well, this is a very negative energy. I mean, I'm sure people have felt this, even just regular non really empathic people, you walk into a party or you walk into someone's house and you just get a weird feeling. Like that's an energy you're picking up on. It may not be a specific named energy, but we're
Yeah.
all kind of inputting this stuff. That's why I ask these questions,
Yes.
just to compare and contrast what your specific experience is like with this stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yes, and I totally agree. And this stuff is not really common, and some people feel these energies. They're really empathic to other people's energies and
Yeah.
feelings and stuff. And with this my first teacher Esko, he was really keen into these energies, and he was really keen to astralic world,
Yeah.
and that's why I didn't want to continue like that. But in the end, all these energies that I feel them in the whole body these days. So my sensitivity have really rised up.
Yeah.
It's really not really nice sometimes because out in the middle of New York or some big city,
Totally.
you feel like you're coming into some devil's hole or whatever. You can feel the energies that everything is not right here.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. When I had a big kind of open awareness, and I think there is something really important to be said about when you kind of blast open your mind and your heart. It sounds like it's all going to be great all of the time because but there's a lot of things out there that if you feel and kind of really engage with are not pleasant. They're not really a fun, comforting thing at times. It doesn't mean they're necessarily bad per se, but I remember when I was in Boston, I was in college, when I had a very big awakening to the point where I was just kind of like totally open for 3 months walking around the
Yeah,
city of Boston. And some of it was very, very pleasant. There's a lot of young people there, relative to other cities, but there's also extreme poverty. There's angry people. And it really was, depending on kind of what you tuned into and felt, it could be very disturbing. So
yeah.
I'm glad that you mentioned that it's just not like, some superpower that's fun all of the time. It really does
No.
require kind of, yeah, yeah, a tremendous amount of kind of patience and wherewithal in terms of how do you modulate and experience this stuff. So yeah, continue though.
Okay. So it's like everybody thinks that this is like a joyride after you've been initiated or you've been having this enlightenment or whatever.
Yeah, you want to call it,
They
yeah.
think, yeah, but if many people would know what kind of energies I've been through, I've been going from. You can say they are layers, like
Mm,
layers of energy or different dimensions that of course we all need to go through if we are going to be if we want to be going forward in our spiritual life. We need to all the time rise our energy.
yes,
That
absolutely.
is something people don't understand. And one thing is that it's a common error to many that are among the spiritual areas that they don't want to clean their energies. They don't just read spiritual books, they do
Yeah.
different than that, but they don't want their body and their energy levels to rise.
This is
And
really important what you're saying here. This is something that I think a lot of people kind of get stuck in neutral when you've brought us up to the kind of like the midway point of what I would call like a spiritual kind of ascension or just getting
yeah,
in touch with stuff. The first point is like, you're going to your first teacher, you're reading all these books, you're recognizing they're intellectually fascinating. And a lot of people I know kind of get stuck in this intellectual kind of
exactly.
turning things over in your mind. Oh, well, this person says this, but how does that line up with this? Then I think people get to a point where they kind of recognize that, everyone's sort of talking about the same thing. So that's really interesting that all these distinct philosophies, religions, teachers are talking about this thing. But then what can happen is people just want to stay in that realm of recognizing, oh, well, this is that. This is that. Let me look at other ways I can decorate it, or let me see what another take on it is. And it really is kind of going in circles a lot of the time. Whereas, the harder work, I think, at that point, where a lot of people jump off because they want this to be like a pleasant joyride, is this is where the real work, I think, actually starts, and where a lot of us find ourselves, which is where you look inside at all of the not so great stuff, the things that you've done wrong, if you have the ability to look back in past karmas and things like that, but really start doing like what I would call the not fun work of spirituality. This is where a lot of people feel like they don't want to kind of push that. And so they go to their little comfortable, they'll go to their retreats, or they'll go to their spas, or they'll go to their yoga things. And, it's one thing to talk about high vibes and high vibrations. And this is why I'm really happy to speak to you about this, because it seems that, when you're talking about higher vibrations and frequencies and energies, it's not like higher in the sense like all good all the time. It's just they're finer, they're more intense, which means that there's polarity in them too. There's the opposite, the darkness that comes along with those, and trying to kind of maintain that is a challenge of a lifetime for sure. So I'm just I'm just bouncing off what you're saying here because I'm excited to hear you talk about this. So yeah. Sorry.
Excellent. But anyway, feeling all these energies through my life, I've been having this meeting different entities, meeting different level of spiritual beings, and knowing all that stuff. It's built up for me long vocabulary that I can use to help people to understand what's really going on here, because especially this, that people don't want to fix their energies and keep up their own high energies. That is something that stops. That's one common block for your spiritual development, and I think that is a main error that many people does. I was in that point later on. I was about 35, and I had really another initiation going on. And I was really in a point that I had to think that, do I want to fix my energies and go back to this, that I want to deal with these old energies?
Yeah.
And I said to myself, of course I want, because I know that is the way to clean, in my cleansing path, to cleaning my energies. And that is cleansing my energies. And that is something that is really important.
So
yeah.
What does that look like for you when you're going and saying you're going to clear your energies? Like, what does that practically look like for you on a daily basis when you made that decision, which I think is important because I don't think people even think about this most of the time, but you're a thoughtful person. So when you're making that decision, you're saying, all right, I can either just be self-defeating, just constantly be getting in my way, which has how a lot of people feel in a lot of aspects of life, or I'm making the decision that I'm cleansing these energies. So what does that look like for you?
Well, it looks like for me that you need to work for it, and it might take some tens of minutes or 1 hour from your day that you really check out where you're going. And when you're walking around, you're getting some kind of a dirt from others. You could say it's dirt. I don't know the word. I've forgotten what is that now.
Yeah.
When you are getting sweat, when you go and have a jogging, you are going jogging around the park.
Yeah.
You get sweat.
Yeah.
You got all the dirt coming out from your skin, from your body. It's a similar thing that when you go out, you will meet the other people's energies, and of course you'll be in contact with all those energies, the feelings and all that stuff. And if your astral body, that is like a hoover if you don't do anything. So during the days and weeks and months and years, the astral body will grow up, and then you cannot control your feelings anymore. And when astral body is full of, how you say it, full of caca.
Yeah, full of not so great stuff that you want to kind of clean off.
Exactly, and they'll be tangling on you some past people, some deceased people. Their souls are tangling on you because your light will be bright. You'll be walking. If you're a spiritual person, your light is more brighter. So they will come into you and think that that's the light where you're supposed to be going, and that's the common thing that all these all these souls are catering around in the place where is the light, you know. And when the light appears to some place like train or bus or some public place, they will come to you.
It's interesting when you say this because it makes me think that it's kind of like a double cleaning process. What we do when we're kind of tuning in to higher frequencies or being more open hearted and open minded is we're basically polishing our mirror, right? This is a phrase that Ram Dass uses, which is
Yeah.
allowing us to be a reflection of this kind of universal light, which we are too. It's not some
Yep.
necessarily some external thing, but when you polish your mirror so it's somewhat visible, it's not caked on with all this muck that everyone else is walking at, you're attracting force, right? You're like a seemingly the source of this light where you're really just reflecting it back at someone, and so then more kind of people and entities and energies come on and you have to kind of clean it again. It's a very interesting way you're putting this, and it makes a lot of sense.
Oh,
Sense.
sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, that's my life, and I think that the main thing that I ended up to Esko Jalkasen's teachings, he really got into them, but he got too dualistic. He was
Mm-hmm.
he was thinking everything polaristic, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want that. And nowadays, when I teach these things, I'm always saying that be careful. There's a It's only thin line when you are cleaning these energies that you are going over the board and you are saying that you are fighting against these entities.
Right. Right. That's important too, that you're not necessarily wanting to fight and push and make it an us versus
Yep.
them thing, which is really
That
just a
is
sign that your ego is getting involved, right? I mean, because that it needs
exactly.
another to function. Yeah.
That is somewhat it's a spiritual ego that
Yes. Yes.
develops to people, and when you
Mm.
go over that board, then you get more resistance.
Yeah.
There'll be more harder entities trying to kick you over, and it's an endless story.
Mm. Mm.
So, um, with these three entities I mentioned,
Yeah.
Satan, Lucifer, and Ahriman, one day just I was working in a warehouse, was driving with that kind of electric mobile, what is it called? Some kind of a car. I'm driving around the
Yeah.
warehouse. Suddenly, those three really dark entities, like I did think back then, they appeared to me,
Mm.
and I started to shout in my mind that Michael, come here,
Yeah.
the archangel Michael, and I started to do some protectings and things like that. And then my guides tell me that look again, don't be afraid, look. And I looked up, and all those three entities turn up into different colors, in
Mm.
the different dimension. There was gold, red, and silver.
Mm.
And now these lower entities, they were black, red, and gray.
Mm.
And so suddenly, at that point, I got information coming through me, and I noticed what kind of a big-headed egoist I have been, or whatever. What in the world I've been thinking about?
Yeah.
Those three entities, the same information came to me right away, and I understood that those are the main energies we need to deal here as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Those are three main energies. Excuse me.
No problem.
There's three energies, and one is you can call them the Holy Spirit, Father, and the Son.
Mm-hmm.
You can call them um, fear or refuge. You can call them um, gratitude and bitterness.
Mm.
Then you can call the third one fear. No, the hatred, or joy.
Hmm.
So nowadays, I'm teaching people how to deal with those three energies, and they're in our body, in my body, in your body,
Yes.
everybody's body, and they are uh, among the chakras as well. The three lower chakras, there you'll be dealing with fear and refuge.
Yes.
That's a lesson that it's in our personal life, in a world life we are living here, and then other one, the bitterness and great thankfulness. That's here in the heart chakra,
Hmm.
around heart area, and then these upper chakras that are in the head and throat, they are dealing with hatred and joy.
Hmm.
So these energies, I'm teaching people how to go through these main three energies, and those three energies are also our initiations.
Hmm.
Mm.
I like this because a recurring theme over the past, well, for a long time, but especially on this podcast for the past few months, has been this idea of embracing shadow work and dealing with kind of the alchemy that takes place from recognizing that these are two sides of the same coin, that these polarities, of course, the duality exists. No one is saying that there aren't opposites in this world. That's very
Yeah,
clear, but
yeah,
that they are essentially the same thing, and trying to I mean, this is also something that you don't have to be particularly spiritually minded. I know people listening probably are, but if you're not, like, people know, like, sometimes you have a really shitty thing happen to you, and because of that you learn something, or it changed you in a way that set you up for a really positive experience later. It's the same thing. The seed of it was a negative, quote unquote, thing that led to something positive. So I like that this kind of has this, I don't want to call it a formula, but this idea of the negative being embedded in the positive and vice versa, and not looking at, oh, I only want to feel good all of the time. Yes, we want to feel comfortable, we want to feel at
yeah,
peace. That should be a natural striving, but to kind of push away things that are uncomfortable leads to so much more pain and suffering than, of course, we ever want. And it's really important to acknowledge this, because I do find that outside of the initial hook, this is just kind of a meta commentary on spiritual teachers, and I really appreciate and am grateful for your sharing your story and kind of your perspective on this. But I feel like a lot of times spiritual teachers, whether prominent, less prominent, famous, not famous, negative experiences are often used as kind of a hook. They'll lure you in. Are you unhappy? Are you unsatisfied? Are you not good? And that's kind of where it ends. They'll get you in, then they'll give you the magic pill of what's going to make you better. Oh, just this style of meditation this many times, kind of like a prescribing something. Whereas that's not what a spiritual practice is. And not just saying that and giving it kind of lip service, but also saying, like, all right, this is going to be uncomfortable probably for a very long time, potentially the rest of your
few
life,
months, few
right?
months,
Yes, yeah, a few
or
months.
rest of your life. Yeah,
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 so I mean, it's going to be something that you're going to have to face regularly if you want to do what you're referring to as kind of a spiritual cleansing. That's depending on how much dirt and muck you've accumulated over this life or any other lives. It could be
yeah,
a fair amount of work, and I think it's important to really focus on that, because we live in a world and an age where we want everything now. We want the
yeah,
page on our website to load immediately. We want people to be able to sign up for our thing, or buy our stuff, or download our podcast, or listen to this, watch that. And that really isn't how a lot of stuff works in the world. What we are living in this planet took millions and billions of years to manifest and make into a reality. So we have to kind of be aware that there aren't necessarily quick fixes for all of our spiritual problems, but we can use very clear tools and
yeah,
kind of methods, some of which you're
yeah,
providing here, that can alter our perspective in a way that is really, really helpful for just our day to day lives, without relying on some quick fix. So I'm glad you're touching on kind of the duality and kind of
yeah.
embeddedness of everything. That's very cool.
Oh, it's really cool, and it's really cool that I got chance to come and speak about this because this is something that everybody goes really through in their life, but they don't really know where to start from.
Yes.
Because they should start from cleaning the past, cleaning the cell memory, and cleaning the memory that brings up all this sorrow and suffering and
Yeah.
whatever it will bring. But one thing is that when you are going through this process, you need to also think that you need to be in love.
Mm.
And without, as we spoke earlier in this podcast, and you said it nicely that we need to think about rising our energies all the time. And without that, those old things and all these cell memories won't open, and the heart
Mm.
memories they won't be opening. So
Mm.
many of the people they don't know how to deal with that, how to cleanse yourself up so much that you're. It's like I call this. It was the word. I will check it out. It's the path of purification path,
Mm.
and that's how I call it as well. So if we don't have the high energies all the time, then it won't happen, and we need proper practice for that, so
So
that
what
going
would
in
you
and rise up your energies.
what would be a practice? I mean, I'll cop to there are still a couple of situations from my past that I have not fully healed from. I have a better and more functional approach towards dealing with my feelings and just kind of the, okay, it is what it is type approach. But
Yeah.
I recognize that at various times I can feel kind of like the karmic pull of snapping back into hurt, upset, anger, all of these things. What are some of the things you do personally or advise people to do to kind of deal with that, which I'm sure is a very common problem
It
people have?
is very common. Yes,
Yeah.
I've been doing it for years
Yeah. Yeah.
already. But anyway, it's a really important question, and I'm glad that you asked. And in my consultations, when person calls, the most common question for me is from person who is really in the beginning is asking me why I'm in a block, why I'm
Yeah.
feeling that I'm not advancing in my spiritual path, and what's going on. I feel really awkward, and I'm laying on still water,
Mm.
and the water doesn't move. So first thing I say that okay, let's look. There are a few things. Karma, yes, of course. That is that you felt as well in your experience that
Yeah.
you know that you have karma, but you don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Well, I know how to deal with it. I've been learning that already during the years, and I know how to deal with it. And many people here in Finland, they're like seers or psychic readers or
Sure.
whatever they are. They think they think it's so easy to find karma, and they say the person they see from astralic level,
Mm.
and they say you don't have karma. Then they come to my consultation, and one of the first things we start is that we check out about the person's karma, and there is still karma left.
Yeah.
And karma is just one of those obstacles we need to face. And one thing, why is it? Because if you have karma, you will be uh, there will be coming towards you many problems. It brings you problems,
Mm.
not only with that person or entity you're having karma with, but also all the problems from your people around you and working mates and people around you. They'll bring you problems.
Right. It's like an attracting force for that type of energy.
Force, yes, it is, and it's a force. It's encircling, so it's going like a spinning towards you,
Mm.
and then that is a problem, obviously.
Yeah.
And then that is something I deal first. Obviously, it's one of the biggest obstacles there. But then when we have find out the karma, there's I had 10 different karmas when I came in, and
Mm.
people usually. think karma as a one big bullock or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
It isn't, and many of the karma books and guidebooks say that oh, karma is a lesson. That is wrong.
Hmm.
People don't understand that karma is not lesson itself. Karma is only uh, unforgiveness between two persons or two entities that are saying to each other that I won't forgive you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is some kind of bond that comes between two persons and only because of this unforgiveness.
How do you rectify that if there is no real ability to do that, right? Let's say the person's deceased, or let's say that you just aren't going to communicate with them because it's unhealthy. How does one go through the process of kind of rectifying that idea? Because I mean, as you're saying that, that's exactly what my karmic knot feels like. And there's obviously several different ones, but one of the ones that's present
Yeah.
is it really is. It's a feeling of kind of bitterness, and just there's this unforgiven thing, and quite frankly it feels like it in this lifetime probably won't be any sense of verbal or overt forgiveness taking place. So what do you do in that situation?
Well, good question. That is quite easy. If you say one only in one sentence how to do it is that you with your heart you connect to your karmic friends, as you say,
Mm.
karmic friends heart, and say to that person or entity that look, I love you as you are,
Mm.
and I know that you love me as I am, and I forgive you, and I ask for your forgiveness. And then you need to probably do that for weeks. It
Yeah, really
depends
tune
on,
into it.
yeah, you need to really focus on that. And some people are not able to do that at first, but when they vocally, maybe saying it aloud, they are practicing it, it gets easier. And then finally you can do it in your heart. And
Hmm.
that takes about 2, 3 weeks, depends on how many percents you have left from that karma,
Yeah, yeah.
certain entity or person. And when you do, while you do that, it's all the time like you are some woodsmith, and you're using this tool. I don't know in English what is it called. Uh, you are
And
doing like this, and the wood is
a
going
saw.
down. No, no, not the saw. You have this sharp blade that is taking slices of from wood.
Like an
What?
axe.
No, no, no. You use it with two hands, and you are narrowing the wood. If you have a
Oh,
if you
I know
have a
what you're talking about. I don't know the word for it. Yeah, 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 yeah.
exactly,
I
I
don't
don't
even
even
know the
know
word
in
for
English, but anyway,
it.
there's a word for that. But anyway, it's like you are taking slice by slice,
Hmm.
slice by slice off from that karma, and the
Hmm.
percentage will go down. And I measure it like this, that there's with one person in one life, there's 100% when you start it. And when
Hmm.
somebody says that I won't forgive you, you did something unforgivable for me. So then when these people meet, the karma will drop down to 80%, and then it will come active. Before that, it's not active.
All
And
right.
then in a life by life, you start to do the same thing. You take the slices off from it by just being together. And it's really common that you end up with a karmic friend you end up being married with, or having children,
Hmm.
and you have karma with them. So that will be cleaning. You've been you'll be polishing it all the time.
Yes, yes, yes. That's the term. That makes a lot of sense here. So, I mean, that first of all, thank you for that. Really, it's funny because when you say these things, there's this is kind of a hard thought to communicate, but two people can say the exact same thing, same words, same tone, same everything, but
Yeah.
one can really connect with a person. It could be like, oh my God, there's tremendous amounts of wisdom. And one can feel like just a repetition of something that they read somewhere or learned from someone. And I do want to say this in the conversation. I really get the sense that this stuff resonates. I've had several times just in speaking with you where I'm thinking about a situation slightly differently than someone has said this stuff to me a million times. But the idea of really, and I like this idea really of the repetition of that idea of forgiving someone in your heart space, because sometimes I've had this, I'm sure you've had this too. Sometimes
Yeah.
the first try, that's it. You feel it. You really connected. You're really in touch with some higher
Yeah.
energy or just whatever it is. And then sometimes you'll do it 50, 100 times. And it's just like you're repeating something that's nothing. It's just like, it's not. And then one time it clicks. And I think that's really important because I think a lot of people, whether it's either trying to get in touch with energies or trying to forgive someone or trying to move past a creative block or any type of block, try something maybe one or two times and they're like, it didn't work. That's bullshit. And it's like
Exactly.
the repetition, and it's a simple thing too, but the repetition of that really can give you a reference point and kind of solidify the practice of doing it. So I just love that you're dropping some serious wisdom here without any real frills. This is just kind of how this is practical stuff that people can do. What are some of the experiences you mentioned? A few of them, but what kind of solidified in your mind your ability to help other people with some of the wisdom and kind of experiences you've had? Like, what was something that crystallized it for you where you're like, you know what, this is where I think that I can actually impart things that have really helped me and other people. I'm going to make this step and kind of like, put myself out there and work with other people.
Yeah. So you mean that you want me to say some experience that I had with my customers or with myself
Really
dealing?
yourself. And it doesn't have to, I know it's kind of like a pin down question, but it doesn't have to be a specific experience, but kind of the transitional moment when you're like, you know what, this is something where I really think that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is something I feel,
Well,
yeah.
yeah. I have one example, yes, and that is that I was working in that warehouse. It was Lidl company, and
Hmm.
I really often say that it's good humor, I think, when I say aloud in my courses and my lectures that they paid my enlightenment. And
Yeah.
so it was like a high school for me.
Mhm.
But anyway, I was working in that warehouse, and in that place there was a lot of people that had problems. It was like a society inside of a society,
Mm.
so called. And every day I was dealing with people that are angry, bitter, or afraid.
Mhm.
And you know that what kind of incidents and happenings that will bring among the working people.
Right. Right.
That will you've been working. I bet you've been working in some store or working with in a group, in a
Yeah.
team. Yes, and there's around 100 people working in that warehouse. That's near here where I live, and every day, maybe 6 months to 2 years that I was working there, every day I faced people who wanted to fight with me in
Mhm.
some. We had arguments. We had several occasions that it was really hard. Those energies were really hard, and I got in a crossing with somebody, and we didn't like each other.
Yeah.
And then, in that point, I was really going through my enlightenment process and going to enlightenment. And second teacher in my life was Jukka Hirvonsalo. He was really something else.
Mm.
He taught everything as one in oneness, not
Not
dualistic.
duality.
Yeah, duality. And then from this oneness point and being one with everybody, being connected to everybody and loving everybody, that really changed my life. That
Mm.
changed my direction as a spiritual person.
Mm.
And then every day I faced these people that wanted to fight with me, and maybe my ego went into that a few times. But then I really understood that I need to start to look from their perspective
Mm.
that why are they behaving like that towards me? And I really, because of course I had this sense that I can feel the people's energies, and I went to that energy and I looked behind their life, and I said to myself that now I want to look at how you feeling. Why are you feeling like that? Why you're bitter to me, and why you have this feeling towards
Mm-hmm.
me? And I noticed many things behind the scenes. That
Mm-hmm.
look, his father was like that. Okay, his mother or her mother was like that. I understand now why she's behaving like that. Then I said from my heart that I forgive you, yeah, and I understand you.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something everybody should do first. That look, why is somebody behaving like that? Understanding the other people's emotions and feelings.
Yeah.
And even science says that we have mirror cells, that
Yeah.
we
Mirror
are
neurons. Yeah. Yeah.
neurons, that we
Yeah.
are able to reflect others' feelings and understand them. But then I understood many things from person, and then I said from my heart that I love you as you are. I know that you love me as I am, and I forgive you, and I ask for your forgiveness from
Mm.
heart to heart, from soul to soul, from light being to another. And then what happened next day? I met the same person, and we talked like old friends.
Mm.
Uh,
It's
that
so
is
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, it's so interesting how that happens, and it's not foolproof every single time. Sometimes someone is just going to stay upset, but it really
yeah,
flips the script in terms of how we interact with other people. With if our main kind of perspective is looking at it from someone else's perspective, it engenders a feeling of trust and love and unity. Even if that person doesn't respond to it, it's there for them to take. And then the other thing that just to counter the way you look at things from your perspective, there's a lot of personal responsibility there. There's a lot of kind of, I am going to be the person who makes something happen for myself. No one
yeah,
else is necessarily going to come in and help me.
yeah,
And it's kind of, if more people had more time spent in those two perspectives, the world would certainly be a better place. It's just obviously it's very
exactly.
difficult the farther you feel away from someone, when someone's saying something that is just objectively hateful and mean and just not nice and they're doing terrible things. It's not our
Yeah,
natural impulse to be like, oh, what's going on with you? It's like, why are you acting like that? What's the matter with you? So
exactly.
it really does change and require a tremendous amount of strength and willpower to kind of allow yourself to do that, and then furthermore forgive the person or extend that spirit of forgiving. It's very powerful though.
It is really powerful, and it's really something that most of people can't do because of that lacking of willpower. And
Yeah.
that is, I think, that is the main thing, that when you are going through your cleansing, no, that was called a path of purification. When you
Yes.
go through that, you need to have a lot of willpower. Unless you have it, you can't go through it. And many people think when they reach too hard, because I'm always saying that the light will come down from crown chakra and will go through from chakra to chakra down to crown chakra,
Yeah.
and that is that purification path we are going through, and we'll be dealing with most of our emotions and hard feelings
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
fears and beliefs and whatever we're going through that. And then people don't notice that when they come to heart, some people get so they feel that now I'm enlightened. Now
Yes.
I have something
Yes.
going on here, and it's still nothing.
Yeah.
They have only dealt with emotion life, and that is the only thing they have done so far.
Right.
Not in the truth yet, and
Yeah.
that is you can read in Facebook. There's plenty of people saying, "Oh, everybody, I have got enlightenment."
Yes, or are presenting that persona that they're somehow they have all of the answers. It's all come to them. And like, listen, I've been there. I've had experiences where I thought I mean, I don't think I listen. I don't think it. I know I was in contact with some very powerful things that absolutely exist that aren't visible and that got some information and had some experiences that is undeniable. And isn't just a function of me taking too many drugs or going crazy. I know that's the case, but I think it's not very hard because we live in a world consisting of egos and personas and people trying to project and internalize all of these things to go right from there to an egoic kind of spiritual materialism that is it's not only nothing, I would argue, in terms of true enlightenment or truly advancing, somewhere of some state of equanimity or wisdom. It can be detrimental because now you're walking around thinking that you have some secret knowledge that no one else has, that you've reached this path. Now you have to be the person to tell everyone about it, where like that's never how anyone learns. Like you can trick people, you can tell them various things and all this stuff. And God knows there are plenty of people doing that, but it's very important what you're saying here that, dealing with your emotional and even psychological issues is different than kind of becoming a better human and also living in truth and real love rather than just this idea or intellectualized concept of what
Exactly.
enlightenment is. That's very cool. Yeah.
And that's not an intelligent thing. People commonly, I don't know in your country, but in Finland, I have come close to people and many magazines that are from this area. They are dealing with these lower level entities and
Yeah.
all this sort of old stuff that been rumbling around for ages now, and and really I think that we should concentrate again to harder stuff in spirituality because
Yeah.
that too light stuff as just meditation
Yeah.
and this what is it called now? You had a podcast with that man who was telling about this what is it now? Fullness? No, mindfulness. Yes,
McMindfulness. Yes. Yes.
mindfulness.
Yes.
And
Yes.
many people in that area they haven't got a clue what is a real enlightenment,
I
and that is
agree. Yeah.
and I think you had a really nice conversation with that doctor. What he was called,
Miles.
Miles.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miles. But I think you had a good stuff there, and it's not so easy to be full-minded, mindful in mindfulness, and
That's right.
that is only it's something like we are talking about here underground spiritual
Yeah.
business now, but those other things that we've been talking about, they are like mainstream in the
Yeah.
spirituality, and the mainstream doesn't take us anywhere. It just wakes up our curiosity about the spirituality, and
Yes.
that's okay. But I really think that after 1950 or 1940, there hasn't been really good books.
Well, I
But
mean, I'd argue, I'd agree that it's really important to not just get caught when something hits the mainstream. It can get diluted, right? You can't have the same potency that you're going to get in a little river or a pond, right? It's a mainstream. It's a lot more water in there to kind of dilute the message. And one thing that has happened, and I really enjoyed that conversation with Miles as well. Basically, when it meets when spirituality inevitably meets the world of business and commerce and capitalism,
yeah,
it even the most ardent and balanced and just really well put together teacher or person who's very well meaning, has great intentions, they're not mean people. It is not hard for that ability to profit and make money from something you're doing to turn into a business very quickly. And unfortunately, the way that the world works now is businesses have pretty much one function, and that's
yeah,
to make more money. It's not to
yeah,
make this amount of money and we're going to stay here and this is enough for us to comfortably run an organization or a business or our lives with. It's this needs to
yeah,
make more next year. Our competitors are making more. Only so many people spend money at retreats. Only so many people spend money at, holistic psychologists or whatever it is. So it becomes this competitive money making game rather than this idea of like, what are we using Vipassana or meditation or mindfulness for? We're not using it so we can become better at making money. We're not using it so we can get a competitive edge over our coworkers and get our family to do things. It's so we can function with more ease in our lives. And people can very quickly misconstrue that with, oh, well, this is going to solve my problems. This is going to be something that I can, use to make my life perfect and better. This person seems, and then this is, I think, the most kind of difficult thing to come to terms with for myself is that the glossiness and fanciness and perceived beauty of a persona of one who can teach someone else something really supersedes any type of real, honest, deep work. And that's not to say, I think you mentioned a very good function of this stuff hitting the mainstream, which is, listen, people get more curious about this. It's great that more people are interested in astrology and shamanism and higher vibrational energies and paranormal psychology and entities and all of these things. But if that's where you're going to stay in the kiddie pool or just use it to enhance your material life, you're missing the real power of this stuff. And it is, of course, a big thing in this country. I think the biggest wave that I'm noticing that it doesn't need to be fought, but an antidote to it is this over intellectualizing and analyzing how all of this stuff rather than just dropping into the feeling empathic. Is this a good thing to do? Is this a compassionate thing to do? Is this something that is wise to do? Do they line up? Dropping into the more intuitive aspects of mind and heart is something that you can't sell it though. You know what I mean? It's not as easy to sell as a book about how to get enlightened, this specific practice. So it's a very interesting point. But I mean, I think more and more people are kind of waking up to the fact that, a lot of this stuff is diluted kind of packaging rather than real, honest kind of spiritual work. Yeah.
Exactly. And I have a feeling to that the problem is that this mainstream stuff is easy, and you don't need to work yourself so much. You can, in the limits of your comfort zone, you can do a lot of things, but you don't want to go out of that box and say that, look, I really want this. I really want to become enlightened. I use my willpower now to become it.
Yeah. It's not easy. It's esoteric. It's not something that we can just track our progress with the app or something.
Tell me about it. But anyway, it's just one example from that.
Yeah.
That is, of course, during the years, I've been rising up my energy and connecting to light beings. And of course, the Brotherhood of Light, one that I've been connecting with, is that I said to them that I am thirsty for truth. I only want to know the truth.
Yes.
And that is the only thing I want. And I said that probably every 5 minutes for a few months. I only concentrating on that I want to know absolute truth.
Focus,
and nothing else matters. And when you say in the Bible that when you knock, you will be opened.
Yes.
But do you think that they opened right away?
Right. They might have a long way to go to get to the door.
Well, I found the door.
Yeah.
The door, and it was symbolically like the wooden door from some old ages.
Yeah.
And I knocked the door, and they didn't respond. And I continued that probably month or two, and I even got more intense. I really wanted that enlightenment and knowing everything. And I knocked a couple of weeks, and they said inside of the door, I heard them. They were sitting, symbolically, some well-known spiritual masters playing cards. They were dealing cards, playing poker and stuff, and they heard me knocking. And the Kutsumi said, is there somebody on the door? And Murray and everybody, nah, there hasn't been anybody for 100 years. Don't bother and deal with the cards. And they played again. So, and that wasn't any joke because there was 100 years back we had a bigger spiritual wave, and as you know, you might know that Madame Blavatsky
Yeah.
started it,
Yeah.
and it ended about the big wave ended about in 40s, 50s, or something like that, and then became this mainstream wave that brought yoga to the world,
Yes.
especially here in Europe and whatever. And 100 years back, there was only one,
Yeah.
maybe two
Yeah.
were not. And one of my teachers, who is he's Finnish spiritual teacher that started to speak here about it was late 1800s,
Mm.
and he died. I think it was 34 or 36 or something like that.
Yeah.
He taught really serious stuff about spirituality and something that nobody have even now. Well, I have I wrote the book.
Hey.
Actually, I have here my book in English, but I wrote book that is called um, the Golden Book of Humanity, and I've been writing those things, and I'm not in the mainstream. I'm really here in the underground these days. But when you go 40s or 30s or 20s, 1920s, there was really many
Yeah.
spiritual teachers that taught really hard stuff, something that had been only in India or some
Right. Some
Eastern.
hard to find kind of wisdom. Well, yeah, I love this. I gotta wrap this up. I have to go get a haircut in a little bit, but I've had such a good time connecting with you. And I want to end with 3 questions and then one practical question. But I really just appreciate you taking the time to kind of come on and do this. And even though you're in the underground, I mean, I think I view this podcast as an opportunity to really kind of shine light on people who maybe don't have traditional channels to get up, and they don't have, a $500,000 ad spend to make sure they're appearing on social media all the time and all of this stuff. So I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it too.
Yeah,
Thanks
yeah,
for asking out.
it's my pleasure. What's your favorite color?
Perhaps as a spiritual person, I should say this and that, but I'm originally born in Andromeda, and that must be the indigo blue.
Nice. I love it. Nice. What is your favorite number?
Well, it must be 11 because that is the number of mastery.
What is your favorite animal?
That is so. Well, if you think my shamanistic part that has been over the hundreds of years and millenniums, I think there's one that is in lynx.
Ooh.
Lynx.
Ooh, very cool. First person to say lynx. Love it. I love it.
And why? Because of that. That is really independent.
Yeah, that's a really cool animal. Last question. What is a practical tip that has helped you in your life that you could share with other people?
I think the most important for me was to understand the hard way that you using your heart, living in your heart, thinking, lowering your thinking from brains to your heart, and say that I am love, I'm in my heart, and I'm here now.
I love it. I love it. Juha, thank you so much for coming on. I'll let you know when this is out, but really just thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I'm glad we got to connect.
Oh, I'm really glad that we did. And if you really feel that you want to deal with your karma, we can have a consultation.
Yeah. I'm gonna make sure that all the information people can find you too. But I just really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and all the best.
All right, take it easy.
Yeah, you too.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
thank you for listening past the music. I'll have some new music for everyone in the coming months. You know how it is in the holiday season. Shit just gets kind of crazy. We had a full moon. Just, you know how it is. Juha, go check him out. I believe his website. His website is searjriverhill.com. I'll have links to this on the podcast, on the episode pages, all of that. syncpodcast.com. You know what it is. winepodnetwork.com. You'll find all that stuff. Go check him out. He has a book too. Please go check it out. If you find anything that he said interesting or on point, I think it's important that we find kind of like the layman people who are able to express some of these things in tangible and practical terms. And that's really what this is about, right? We're trying to make sure that the act of being spiritual or doing inner work isn't completely mystifying and just detrimental and hard for us. And we also, as we spoke about in this episode, we don't want to get caught in spiritual materialism. That's a big trap for Western cultures because we see something and then we make that thing the pursuit of our ego and that alone. And we see this all the time. So, seek out people who can kind of keep you on track without inflating their own ego or your own. That's my advice. I'm full of fucking advice today. I have no idea why. That's it for this week, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.